All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 3. Farm to Table, here we are. Before we get going, I just wanted to put a little reminder out there on behalf of part of our lovely career services team, Deborah and Natalie, who are both here tonight. If either one want to talk about a little bit of externship or just give them a good old rawr.
Well, folks, I want to say I work with everybody on the East Coast, and Joseph, I know you're my student. Hello, how are you? We're coming down to the final push towards externship. It really is now that the accountability starts with you all, and making sure you're making those site visits. I know I've worked with my students on getting you prepared for that. So it is now the time to go out and make it happen. So if you're an East Coast student, anywhere from Maine to Miami, and you're feeling uncomfortable, give me a call this week. Make it sooner than later, and I can hold your hand and we can make it happen. So, and if you've gone out and you found a site and I don't know about it, make sure that you're telling me, because that's the best present I get every day. Okay? Thanks, Chef, for having us here today.
Thank you, Natalie.
Yes, and I'm Deborah. I work with students on the West Coast, and same thing, I want to make sure you are set up for success for your industry externship course and graduate the program on time. So if you have any questions about your getting started or you still need help finding an externship site, please let me know, and I am here to work with you. So thank you, Chef.
Pleasure having you here. Thank you. So guys, let's do it, right? Week 2, the assignment. Already getting that paperwork started. Whatever you have, any tips, hints, any leads that you're working on, put that in there. All right, that's where we need to see it. It's where Chef Shadeen's going to see it. It's how we get you to the next steps into externship and then beyond out into the wild industry where you really make a name for yourself and go after it. So let's just keep pushing for it right now. All right, we're all here to help and want you to succeed. So. Well, let's move on to a little bit of reflecting on week 2. Any comments or questions or experiences that you had, positive or negative, or challenges regarding the pickles and jamming assignment this past week? How did it go, everybody?
It went well for me. I had fun with it.
What'd you make?
I made an apple pie filling.
Okay.
Yes, it was easier than I thought as well, too.
All right. Awesome.
Yep.
Perfect. Anybody else?
Yes, I made a pickled jalapenos and tamarind preserve.
Wait, pickled jalapenos, and what was the other one?
The tamarind.
Oh, all right. What type of tamarind jam or syrup, or what did you make?
A tamarind jam.
All right. How was that?
Amazing. You see, tamarind is a very versatile fruit, and you can turn it into a lot of things, because I also made tamarind juice and tamarind balls.
Awesome. So tamarind is, for those of you who might not know, can be, it has a lot of pulp, and it's a darker, like a really pretty brown with a little hint of mahogany. I'll pull up a photo of it, but it's really also acidic. So how did you balance that with the sugar? Did you feel like is your end result acidic or sweet, or what did you?
End result sweet, because now you can get the sweet tamarind as well. So you can I use both usually. And usually if I use the really sour ones, I boil it out first and I use that to make the juice.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know that there was a sweet and a sour tamarind.
Yes, there is.
Huh, awesome. Does it look the same? I'm gonna pull up a photo.
Same exact thing.
Huh, okay. So I will pull this up so everybody knows what we're talking about in case you don't.
There's one in my folder as well.
Perfect. For everybody out there, this is tamarind. All right, you see you have a little bit a papery hard shell, thicker than paper, but it's not too tough. And then you have all this fantastic pulp inside that you can make, is used in a wide variety of cuisines. Really, really fantastic accent to dishes. Cool, thanks. What else? What else did anybody else make?
I saw some really creative ones, Chef. I saw some Swiss chard stems. There was some quail eggs I saw.
No way.
Yeah,
Awesome.
somebody did quail eggs. I did see a couple of egg ones. There was a lot of ones that doubled their assignment, which was nice, like doing a peach jam and then doing pickled peaches also. Same thing with strawberries. I think one person did pickled onions and then did like a pickled onion compote, a sweet onion compote also for theirs. So there was definitely a lot of creativity.
Wow. Awesome. I love it. Absolutely fantastic. Cool. Well, it sounds like it was overall pretty good. Anything else that you needed to bring up or note, Chef Craig? Nope.
No, everything looked good. Just everybody remember how important the process is with the sterilizing of the jars and getting the can with a really good seal. Because if we're letting things sit for a year, 6 months, 8 months, that's a really long time, and you don't want to risk anybody getting sick. So having those procedures in place definitely helps that with the preserving process.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. And think about how many applications you can use those, both pickles and preserves, in sweet and savory applications in a menu. You know, this is where you add depth to plates, and add a surprise, like a new texture, a little sharpness, sweetness, textural differences, and color differences that show up on a plate. Plating is really important, and you can use pickles and jams to add some contrast to the plate in addition to flavor. So cool. All right. Well, that was pretty good. So let's talk about week 3, everybody. We're going to start talking about the big question. Where does our food come from? So obviously, we know that it comes from a farm, right? The earth, yes, exactly. From the water, right? It comes from the land. Think about now how it gets from point A to point B. What do we all think those, what is called a carbon footprint, right? Emissions, right? These are natural resources that we have to use. Exactly, Sean. Sean's always popping things into the chat. Transportation, packaging, right? Why do we think that now we have everything coming in packaging, right? Because there's a demand for it. But how does that exactly impact the environment? When you're wrapping everything in styrofoam, plastic wrap, bags and bags, do we think that that's necessary? Do we think that that is needed? Or is it excessive? Do we think that we need to start looking at our packaging, just like we talked about in restaurants, right? How can we start using more sustainable packaging? Maybe that's another angle we need to start looking at. The transportation, right? So I'm gonna, Sean, I see your hands up. What's up, Sean? Sean?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was just thinking with local food sourcing, the carbon footprint is a lot lower than if you source out further away. And packaging really is just for length in, keeping it longer. So if you're getting it locally, you don't really have to have that packaging as well.
Boom. You got it, Sean. Exactly, right? If we are not transporting our products as far, right, we probably don't need as many pieces of plastic surrounding our one piece of fruit, right? Or box of fruit or whatever, because you don't need to worry about the fruit or the vegetables being shipped in a truck for X amount of days, right? Or stored in a warehouse. So Great job. Yeah, that's exactly it. Your carbon footprint when you're sourcing locally, much smaller, which will, in some settings, offset the price, right? Sometimes local's more expensive, sometimes it's cheaper. So, what I want you all to start thinking about is, obviously, we're talking about seasonality. What grows in your region? Where does food come from? So I want to pull this up for a second, and I'm going to show you this because it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool visual that I think you all will enjoy. All right, here we are. So this is a pretty cool website, Alimentarium. I'll put this in here so you guys can look at this later. But check this out. Do you see this? The transport, right? It says right here, cereal, right? Wheat, grains, was domesticated in the Middle East, all right? Right here. And now that is being grown all over. In China alone, they're creating about 20% of the total production. That's pretty wild, right? Tomatoes, again, we know after your last class, Cuisines of the World, that tomatoes came from Central and South America, right? And now, boom, we head over to China. About 30% of the total production is being grown there. Do we think that we grow enough tomatoes in the US to supply all of our needs? Or do you think that we're importing from perhaps China? Kiwis. Coffee. I know we talked about cocoa 2 weeks ago. Here's the potato. Look at all of this. Do we see a trend here? We see all of these foods that have started in other locations and have now migrated and are being grown at huge rates in other countries. So obviously, China, India, very large populations, right? Demand for growing them. However, a lot of that product is being shipped around the world. So what do we think, how is that getting, how are those tomatoes, how are those lemons, how are the kiwi, how is that getting from China to your kitchen? Who knows? Does anybody have any idea of what that process looks like? Anybody? What type of transportation? How are we doing this? If we're crossing seas, do we think we're flying that? Getting stacked and put on a barge, right? And that barge, containers, right? Containers full of food, get loaded onto a huge barge and then shipped. How long do we think it takes to go from China to a major port in the United States? Then what happens next? Gets loaded off that barge, it goes into the port, it gets inspected, right? You have agents who are inspecting imports, right? Just as exports and imports are coming in, somebody's checking that, right? What's allowed in, what's not allowed in. Then from that port where you're getting checked in, then that gets taken to a warehouse, right? From the warehouse, broken down into smaller pallets, right? And then trucks, boom, spreading out across the country and delivering it to grocery stores or other larger warehouses, hubs that then distribute the food again. How fresh do we think our food is? How many days old on average do we think a piece of fruit or a vegetable has been sitting around since it's been plucked? A week or two? Days to weeks? It's a long time, right? When we think about harvesting fruits or vegetables, don't we want to eat that? Don't we think about the vitamin and mineral content, right? Flavor quality? How do we think that tomatoes that are harvested in China or even California, right, or Mexico, we talked about this in week 1, but I want to bring this back. They're harvested green, right, and put into a chalk. And how do they go from green to red? Who remembers? Who knows? How do your green bananas that were harvested, they ripen in transit? Yeah, but how? You think this is this natural ripening that's occurring or forced? Forced. All right. Does anybody know or remember ethylene gas? So ethylene gas, right? Okay, that's what, when plants start to mature and age and ripen, they release ethylene gas, right? Which helps make everything else around it ripen as well. So if you have one banana, right, or one tomato that is already, or an apple that's already starting to ripen and mature faster, right, it is going to make the other produce surrounding it also mature and ripen quicker. This is just the gas. It's just the normal cycle of vegetables, right? Just like if you have, you know, you'll see some shortcuts and tricks about, oh, if your avocados aren't ripe, put a banana in there, right? A banana's that's ripening quicker, right? That's because it's, and you contain it, right? That's why it's going to release ethylene gas in this little compartment, and you're doing just a faster ripening process, right? So do we think about then storage, right? Remember, think back to like CA102, where you learned about how to store things properly, right? That's why you do not want to store certain vegetables and fruits next to one another, because they're going to release more ethylene gas. Think about how quickly herbs and greens, right? Tender, delicate, these ripen really, they will spoil quicker than a sturdy vegetable, right? So that means they're going to be releasing that ethylene gas. So you want to be keeping in mind of your storage. We look at food waste, right? Food waste is huge. Why? Often due to spoilage. Well, think about the little impact that you can have, right? Which is, okay, I need to make sure that my certain vegetables and fruits are kept away from one another, because I don't need anything else speeding up that ripening, because the chances of losing more food, right? So it's important when you think about storing, okay? So I'm not gonna get totally into GMO today. We're gonna tap into that next week when we start to talk about genetically modified organisms, labeling, what goes into labels, right? What role does the USDA play in our food? So start thinking about that, okay? And start thinking about seeds, okay? We need seeds. We talked about this, David brought it up, I think, in week 1 about the watermelon. How can you make fruit if it's seedless? How do you grow more fruit from seedless fruit and vegetables? Where do these seeds come from? Right? So start thinking about that. Start thinking about where your food is coming from, how long it takes to get from point A to point B. How many hands does it touch? Do we think that there's a chance for, right? There's been a lot of cases of E. coli, right? Tracking your food, right? So really, guys, and gals, what I'm trying to get back to is knowing where your food comes from, okay? When you are the chef, sous chef, kitchen manager at a restaurant, you will be ordering food, right? So does anybody know who's in the industry, or anybody know of any major, maybe you've seen these on the highways, right? Huge trucks that are representative of food companies. Does anybody know any names of some of the big food companies? Tyson, Cisco, all right. Yes. What else? Anybody else? Gordon Food Service, GFS, right? Okay. So these are massive hubs, right? These are huge distributors of food and produce. US Foods, exactly. All right. Now, what about smaller local purveyors, right? Suppliers. Right? I see some other, oh, look, we got Del Monte on there, right? So maybe you're going to start to notice, oh, there are smaller purveyors as well. Okay? Do you think that you necessarily will have a know who's growing your food when you're ordering from huge companies like Cisco? Probably not. You don't know that farmer, right? You might know that it comes from California, but probably will never meet that farmer unless you live in that area where they're being grown. Then you could, then you can get some tracking information because everything's tracked, right? You have to know where everything comes from because in case of of any type of recall, we need to track and figure out what happened, right? Where did the point of contact go awry? So, do we think that maybe behind all of this, there's something bigger, right? Being connected. I saw a lot of posts in the discussion forum. People were, and by the way, I haven't finished grading that, so I'm still working on that. But a lot of people were talking about the memories that you form with food and friends, okay? And how important this is, right? Isn't that in itself part of sustaining life, right? Food, friendship, and relationships sustain life, okay? So now we've got this big grand scale of things where we're talking about stuff is being shipped over from China, loaded onto a bar, from a farmer in China to your plate, right? That's a huge gap. We don't really know. I mean, we walk into a grocery store and food's just there. Now they've gotten better and sometimes they will identify these apples are from New Zealand, this ginger is from China, the garlic is from Costa Rica, right? These are things that you want to start paying attention to. Where is your food being grown? What policies and practices do they have there? Okay? Because every country, every government has different regulations on what chemicals, pesticides, and whatnot can and cannot be applied to fruits and vegetables. And for that matter, what can be fed to animals. Right? So, don't we want to know what's getting put on our vegetables? What type of soil is being used to grow garlic in? Can we trust labels from other countries saying that they're certified organic? It's pretty easy these days to just make a label and slap, oh, this is organic, right? Who's checking that stuff out? Do we know? Who's regulating that? Who regulates the ingredients that are listed? Why are some ingredients allowed in some packaging and other countries do not? The EU, the European Union, for example, said no to GMO. This was years ago, right? And if so, it has to be put on the package. Has anybody noticed lately that you've started to see this food was made with genetically engineered products? I see Aquarian. Is that Aquarian nodding her? Yep, nodding her head. You've noticed that, right? This used to not be there. So there's a push for different laws and regulations coming out. Okay, that's how change happens, right? Awareness. So you need to know what's happening in not just your backyard, but around the world, okay? We have to be aware of growing practices. It's important, right, to know what we're eating. We can make better choices if we're more aware. Otherwise, we walk into a store and we grab stuff off the shelf and we don't look and we take it in, right? Shouldn't we be asking a few more questions? Because remember, the food, right, that we're cooking with, those are our tools. That just as an artist would select great paints, they don't want to use crappy paints and paint on crappy paper, right? Because the end result, meh, so-so. So you want to be aware of where you're getting your fruits and vegetables. What does it taste like? Do yourself a favor. I do this to my friends and family all the time because I think it's important. Pick a product, right? Maybe it's sour cream. Maybe pick a dairy. Do it on different things, right? Once a week, decide you're going to do a comparison. Buy an organic eggs that we'll go through the labels later. But this is a great thing, right? Organic and then just a regular old one. And cook them for somebody in the exact same way, right? And let them taste. Don't tell them. Let's observe the differences. Is the yolk a different color? Is it firmer or softer? Is there a different smell to them? If you take the sour cream, for example, an organic sour cream versus a regular sour cream, look at the ingredient list. Are there thickeners being added to that sour cream, random preservatives that really don't need to be there? And you look at the organic label and you take that one. Okay, now taste them on their own. See what you notice is the difference, right? This is just important for you to know, hey, where do I get noticeable difference in flavor profile, right? Because not everything is gonna be, you're gonna say, I don't notice that much of a difference in some things. I guarantee it, right? But some things there will be a definite difference between the two. So check it out. Have yourself a little fun and occasionally taste it. Because I know organic is expensive, okay? I'm not saying, hey, guess what? Everybody start going buy organic. No, it's totally unreasonable until we create more of a demand. But even we all know if you take if you grow anything, right, out of your backyard and you taste that versus one that you buy at the store, we know there's a difference, right? A chicken, if you have a chicken that lays eggs in your backyard, definitely tastes different, right? So just start doing this. Start actually analyzing the ingredients and quality of food so that you start to understand how to become a better cook, all right? And to notice the difference. Salt, what are the differences in salt? Are you using iodized salt, kosher salt, black salt, pink salt? What are the salinity levels? All right? This is our craft, right? So you want to know as much as you can about it. Be able to, and it takes time. It takes a long time to start to notice slight nuances. But I guarantee with time, you will start to notice this. And with that time, you will become a better chef. The integrity of your product, how you treat the product. If you know how a farmer raised its animals or its vegetables, grew the vegetables, you are going to take that product and have a lot of respect for it, right? And you will honor that food by cooking it just to perfection, right? Because somebody spent their life to raise and grow this food, right? So by treating that food, we treat the whole system with respect by honoring it, right? Not wasting. Utilization, okay? So getting back to this connection with the farmer, right? So obviously, we've looked at farm-to-table restaurants. Some of them are really small. Some of them are growing their own vegetables. Sometimes that's not going to be possible, guys. You're not going to have that at the restaurant you're working at. You're not going to have that availability. You're not going to have that option to say, hey, actually, I'm going to be buying this food from this farmer. Maybe it's not in the budget. Maybe it's just not an option. However, if it is, we've got to know about a few important things, which is getting that product, procurement. Okay, Chef Greg, do you want to talk a little bit about procurement of ingredients?
Sure. So a huge part of your job as a chef is going to be buying things. Whether you choose to open a restaurant, a food truck, go into corporate, that was my path, you're always going to be buying things. So I want to show one thing first about seeds, and then I made a little helpful hint sheet for everybody. So this is in Norway. This is a seed vault. It's really cool to read about. There is a couple of videos. There's not a ton of videos on it. However, this kind of almost protects us from ourselves. This has almost every seed ever in there. It has really unique things. If there was kind of a natural mutation, they'll keep that like a spare copy of it. This is to protect us, and this is to make sure we don't run a product extinct. We don't run a seed extinct, a grain, a vegetable, things like that. So this is in Norway. It is pretty much literally at the top of the world. Almost, it's like right next to where the globe starts to turn over. But this is something really interesting to look into, if you guys would like. I'll put what it's called in the chat. But when we're talking about purchasing, so when we're talking about trust in your suppliers, and we talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago, taking a tour. If somebody's coming into your restaurant and I have the best beef ever, I have the freshest shrimp, you should ask them to do a tour. They should absolutely be willing. They should actually invite you to do a tour, test some samples, stuff like that. If they won't let you, that should be a red flag. Like, are they hiding something? Just as the health inspector comes into your place, you can go in and inspect somebody else's. You can ask them for FDA codes. You can ask them if it's dairy, how they pasteurize it. I would like to see it. You use about black light. I would like to see the process. What is their HACCP programs? Every one of you will have to have your own as being a chef, but you can ask to see somebody else's. When you're talking about trust, is there a service charge for you? Are they going to charge you extra to drive that truck out? It could be $35, and you order 3-4 things from the produce company. So your total invoice may be $70, and they charge you $35 just to drive it and deliver it. That's 50% for your invoice. Also on minimums, if they agree to not have a minimum, so a lot of this is more for bigger operations, but if you're ordering from Cisco, for an example, Cisco has to make it worth their time. Otherwise, they do hit you with a huge service charge. So depending on your business size, you may have a $1,000 minimum. If you're ordering Cisco twice a week, that's $2,000 to hit your minimum for them to deliver it before they charge you. That's a lot of money in food. If we're talking about more of a private thing, do you need to weigh the products when you come in? If you know a farmer that's bringing you whole sides of salmon, they take the pin bones out, they take the head off for you, still has the skin on, and they're delivering it, and they're charging you for 30 pounds of salmon. Do you need to weigh that? How do you know you're getting the 30 pounds unless you trust them, unless you check them? You're allowed to have a huge scale in the back of your kitchen, even Cisco, anything. A 50-pound box of potatoes comes in. You can pick it up, put it right on the scale, look at it. If it's constantly 48, next week it's 47, next week it's 45, all of a sudden we start to dip in the 40s, you're paying for 50 pounds. You need to trust what they're going to send you is what you're ordering. All in the gray here, this is kind of more towards working in a large corporate, but I did want to cover it. So Proact, Avendra, Food Buy, I had contracts with one of these companies, depending on which corporation I worked at, and they would actually go do FDA inspections for everything that I was going to order. So where I was going to order my fish from, I wouldn't buy anything until Avendra went out there, did a full inspection, gave me the report, and it got approved. So in a larger scale, there will be companies that do that for you. I do recommend going to see things for yourself, of course. However, there are things that you can pay for services to do so. And this one, I did use $1 million because I wanted just to be more eye-opening. Insurance information. So you want to make sure that they have liability insurance. Think about Romaine. How many people got sick? How many recalls? How much about that? Do they let you know about the recall and how quickly? So if somebody got sick and you served the Romaine, you would be liable, you served it. However, they would be liable also. So you wouldn't want to have this huge liability of $1 million, and then they have their liability is $55,000. It's just something to always think about when that's the trust in people. Can you match my liability? Can you match my business? These are more tips for buying. Compare and let them know their competitors' prices, comparison, buy, and price bidding. Everybody's bought a car. Not necessarily the best experience. However, what do? You go and you drive a car, and then you go to another dealer and you drive it. And then they call you 50 times on the phone. You tell them that. They just said, I could get this car for $14,000. Now I'm driving yours and it's listed at $15,500. What can you do? I literally can just walk back over there and get it for $1,500 less. Do you want to match it? You can do that with competitors. Especially if you're going to know, if you're going to use a ton of snow crabs and somebody says, I can lock you in at a price for 6 months for $9.99 a pound. Then the next fish guy comes in and he's like, oh, that's great. I can lock you in for a price at $11.99 a pound. Okay, thank you, but I can get them $2 cheaper per pound for somebody else. So you are allowed to play a game with your prices. Something to look out for, do they offer a percentage off buying certain amounts, like a bulk discount? Split charges. You may operate a small bakery and you have raspberries and strawberries, but you only need 6 pints a week. And they may sell them in 12 pints. They shouldn't be charging you a split charge. They shouldn't charge you extra per pint because they had to take them out of the case. That's something you could just tell them. Like, I'm going to order 6 pints all 52 weeks of the year. I'm not paying a split charge. Can you get more than one thing from a purveyor? When we're talking about service charges and minimums and stuff like that, can you get more than one thing? If you're getting produce from a place, should you order all of your produce from that place? It's something to think about. If you have a one-off super specialty item and it's really close, can the guy just drive it over to you? So it's just something to think about when you're setting up your ordering and setting up your purveyors. And then just a couple other small things. Do they have what you need? You have your menu written out, you have all your recipes done, everything's costed out for yourself. Does that company have everything that you need? Some produce companies do carry a lot of dairy. So if you're ordering your produce, maybe you just have your eggs or your 1 or 2 kinds of cheeses add on. And the same thing with meat companies. A lot of meat companies do own a fish company. They run it under separate operations, but they do own it, so it's the same company. And then this is the last one. This is just good chef life advice. Time of delivery. Contract the time and hold them to it. There's nothing worse if your restaurant is open lunch and dinner, and you get there at 7 a.m., and your produce delivery time is 7 to 9 a.m., and all of a sudden lunch starts at 11 and there's no produce there. 11:30, there's no produce there. And then it shows up at 1 o'clock. That'll hugely hurt your lunch business. You don't have time now to prep dinner. You have to call 15 times what happened, all that stuff. Have a delivery time and make them stick to it. You are the customer. You have the buying power. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you, Chef.
Of course.
Fantastic. So, do we start to see why these relationships with everybody that you're involved with in the restaurant are important? Right? Your purveyor. Your farmer. Who's supplying? What's going on? Where's that milk coming from? How fresh is it? All these questions. These are questions you need to be asking, okay? Not just for yourself, but for the establishment as well. So I want to start talking about, we think about ethical companies, right? We want to support ethical companies, right? Isn't that usually what you want, right? A company that's doing good and trying to help improve the world, right? Whether it's by being more eco-friendly or better benefits for workers, right? Probably pretty important to know how our farmers, not just the actual farmers, but the harvesters, the migrant farm workers, right? Who do we think is harvesting all of the fruits and vegetables in the US specifically? Anybody have an idea? Do I see some hands? Yeah, David. Immigrants, yeah. Predominantly from just south of the border, right? We have a huge demographic of farm workers, right? Migrant farm workers. So then when it's cherry season in Michigan, they're going up. When it's onions, they're going down to Georgia, right? They're going down. It's different areas have their harvest at different times. And these crops, which are different than soy, right? Soy, corn, these big cash crops, right? That are sturdier can be harvested by machines, right? Because you think about these big like metal blades kind of coming in and harvesting and cutting. You can't do that with fragile, delicate fruits and vegetables, right? You actually need hands going up there, right? Something to grab it, to snip the grape bushel, right? So how do we think that these migrant farm workers, their living conditions are, what their pay is, what their benefits, do we think they get them? Do we think that people even in the restaurant industry always get benefits? Right? If you're working for a corporate, larger chain, you're going to have health benefits, right? Because it's a large company, different federal regulations. But smaller, independent standing restaurants, they might not supply benefits. That might not be part of your offer. So do we think that this is kind of like a big thing, right? So we've got all these workers harvesting our fruits and vegetables who are maybe not always living in the best of conditions, right? And are they getting paid by the hour? Are they getting paid by the quantity they harvest, right? How many bushels did you fill? Are you getting, so most likely you're going to be starting getting paid for the hour, because otherwise you might have somebody who's just kind of lazing around. That's not going to cut it, right? So you really have to push it. Plus it's harvest time. So it's like, go, go, go. So you have a real a force here. What we have is being created with people that are not throughout the farming and restaurant and hospitality industry who are living in not the best of conditions necessarily, right? Because hourly wage is not extremely high, and then you're not getting benefits. Yeah, David.
Won't most likely stay that way, because if you do all that, then the price of the vegetables go up astronomical, and then the price to the chef goes up to to be able to make the meals to be able to give to the customer. So won't it most likely stay that way? It has to.
But who are we? That's what I'm getting at. That's what I want to talk. I want all of this to be a discussion. I want you all to contribute, right? Do we think that that is worth it? So that the majority gets vegetables for a cheaper price, or maybe we need to start charging more for fruits and vegetables and meat and restaurants, right? Do we think that it's okay? Maybe, I know I personally have worked without insurance, benefits, working for free. Do we think that this is okay? Do we think that this is good for the population, right? The general population, for the advancements of humans, right? Do we think that this is okay? And at what cost do we say, I don't care. I want my bananas cheaper, or I want my tomatoes cheaper because that's what I need for my bottom line. And that's what's important to me. And I don't care about the life of any of my cooks, my dishwashers. I don't care about the migrant workers that are harvesting this, right? So I think this is where we get to start thinking, okay, right? We pay with our dollars, right? We spend, we use wisely, right? When we can, we should be making decisions to support humane and ethical treatment of humans, of animals, and of the land, right? Because that will better all of us. But the flip side is everybody's got a bottom line. I get it. I do too, right? We all have a budget. Our lives have budgets, right? How much do we spend on food? What do we, you know? So I totally get it. If it was a perfect world, we'd all be, you know, paid and equally and have benefits and all get good food to eat too. But that's not the reality. There's a lot of inequality. So it's trying to shift that inequality is what I'm getting at, right? Let's do our best whenever we have the option to pay a little bit more for the dishwasher who's working 12 hours and works 2 jobs and shows up to work all the time, right? Let's pay a little bit more. Same with the farmers who are showing up at the farmers market. They're not living glorious, you know, extravagant lives, right? They're working in the land, working hard labor jobs. Chefs, cooks, those are hard labor, physically demanding jobs as well, right? So just think about that, right? I want everybody just to think about all the people that are involved in getting food from point A to point B, all right? And then think about all the people that we make happy and we create memories around and joyous occasions about and around food. It's pretty magical, right? So this week's assignment is all about building relationships. So you'll be going out into your community to find a baker, a beekeeper, a vintner, a brewer, cheesemaker, butcher, right? And talk to them about how he or she got into that specific field and ask them some questions about them, right? We talked about this a little bit last week and talking about how it's gonna be fun to talk to somebody that's passionate about something, right? I see Aquarian saying, lives across from the street from a farm. Awesome, perfect. So when a few requirements, I'm gonna pull this up so we can look at this. Few requirements when it comes to the actual assignment, okay? When we say a baker or butcher, obviously if some things, if you live in an area where that just is not an option, please just reach out and contact either me or Chef Greg. But what I want you to see is this. We are not necessarily looking for you to go to the butcher or the baker at your local Walmart, right? It's a little bit of a different approach. We're talking about maybe an independent, freestanding butcher or bakery, all right? So here we go. So there we go. Farmer, beekeeper, cattle rancher, cheesemaker, brewer, vintner, all these, right? A farmer at the farmer's market, food seller. If you have a question about who would be acceptable to interview, just go ahead and ask us, right? If you have some doubt or if you're in a situation where you don't have any of this available to you, we do have chefs on our staff that you can interview, right? Chef Tyson, who we've all had, Master Butcher, right? He is always happy to talk to students if you don't have any other option, and as well as another one, Chef Sophia's brother is a cattle rancher, and he might be a little bit more difficult to get a hold of right now. But if you're having any type of difficulty, just please reach out. And that's why we talked about this 3 weeks ago. We said, let's start thinking about this, right? A vintner is somebody that makes wine. A brewer might be a really easy target, I think, because these days Local craft beer is pretty huge. Almost every town has one, or nearby town has one. That's boom, beeline there. All right. These are just some questions to get the ball rolling, and then ask a few of your own. All right. The most important thing here is proof of your interview. So that would be a recording, plus or the photo of you and the person you interviewed. Like I said here, if the interview is conducted via email, if you can't do that in person, a copy of the email, right? The back and forth of the questions. If they have a website for their bakery, throw that in there as well, right? The more information we can get, the better. What we don't want to see is anybody going online and doing the old copy paste, right? Don't just find somebody and create an interview, because Chef Greg is like a master detective, and it's just not. There's no point in even attempting to get past us with that. So find somebody, and if you can't find somebody, talk to us about it, right? We will help you. We always want you to succeed. Okay, that's the goal here, right? Daryl, I see your hand up. What's up?
Yeah, Chef. You were saying as far as I'm in the boonies,
Okay.
and it's a lot of ranch hands farmers out here. Now it's kind of like the weather is bad,
Yep.
and they're kind of not doing work, so it's kind of hard to catch those.
Yeah. Okay.
But as far as butchers and stuff like that, it's more of us as small towns.
Yep.
What about like if we go to the supermarket? Would that be okay? Because those are like the only butchers that we have at meat markets too.
So like a meat market that's just devoted to meat?
Yes.
Oh, that would be fine. I just that would work. They're a butcher and they're in there actually taking
Yes.
sides out. Yeah, go talk to them. Talk to them about it. See?
Okay. We have several of those. Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure we was on the same page with that for us butchers.
Yeah. Mostly it's just we want you to connect with somebody, right? Talk to them about their craft, right?
Okay.
Get some information, right? Some of these questions are, hey, like what got you interested in your profession? Maybe it's that his or her father or mother was a butcher, right? Or a baker, right? And you get this story, and then maybe you want to ask some questions maybe that are outside. Oh, do you have what do you do with, right? Offal, right? Next week we're going to be talking about offal, right? Oh, what parts sell a lot? What parts don't? Start to think about, why does something sell? Why doesn't something sell? Why is there a high price on this and a low price on that? Just dive into the food, into the meat of it, right? Ask some cool questions, get some interesting information. All right.
So, Chef, what you're saying to me basically be prepared as far as write a couple of questions down that'll be interesting to give to them.
Well, yeah, that you'll want to ask because you'll be recording it. Or
right, that's what I'm saying. Well, have them wrote down.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. You guys, this is the other thing, right? So you want to be professional, first and foremost, right? We're representing, and if they say, hey, yeah, I'm doing this for I'm at culinary school, I'm a student in the farm to table class, and we are, have an assignment to interview X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. And, that's pretty much how it is. You want to be prepared. You want to have your questions come in because remember, maybe this connection that you meet with somebody, right? Maybe you meet a butcher and you're like, wow, cool. You know what? You're so passionate about your food. Who knows what the future holds? Maybe you're like, oh man, I've got this dream to do this barbecue joint and I need racks of ribs coming in nonstop, right? So maybe now you've just formed a connection that you can use later on, right? Maybe you meet a baker and you start trying a baker and you're like, whoa, you know what? I have never even, outside of the baking and pastry class, haven't really dug into it. And this person was so passionate about baking that now I want to get into it. Or beekeeping, right? And it's that exchange of knowledge, right? And the possible connections that you can make that will help to grow your network and your future to be a stronger place, right? Maybe somebody knows where to get really good flour or really good yeast or raw honey, or the difference of the honey that the bees that feed off of apple trees versus cherry blossoms or wildflower, right? Did anybody ever think, well, what's the difference between raw honey and regular honey? Is it cooked? Is it heated? What happens? So just try to get as much information as you can, you know, about what he or she does and what inspires them. Okay? There's some examples on the website that you all can look at. This can be created in a slideshow form. It can be in a document form. You know, as long as you've asked questions, answered questions, and have a media proof of it, we're good to go. Okay? So that's one thing to remember. This industry is extremely small. So you always want to be presentable, right? Be respectful of everybody's time. Just like you want somebody to be respectful of your time, we must be respectful of others, right? So hopefully it'll work. And also, just a heads up, if for some reason you cannot get your interview completed by the due date, right? What do we want you to do? We want you to put something in writing and submit that, and you will be able to submit it at, you know, within, say you're like, oh man, I've got this great butcher, but he or she's not available until Friday. That's fine. Put that in the assignment. Let us know. I've got an interview set up to meet Joe the butcher, and it's on Friday, so I will have my assignment in by Saturday. Okay? That's kind of what we want. We want some information. I see Anicia's asking, how long should the interview with the person you're talking to? Oh, there, Greg, Chef Greg's already, yep. Go for it, Chef.
Oh, just everybody, please be descriptive in your assignments. If you're asking them what food trends are they seeing, they're not going to just reply to you none. They're gonna say something to you. If you're going to a butcher shop, you ask them what food trends they're seeing. You can look at the cases beforehand. I see you have a little bit of Kobe beef here. How much of a market is there in Kobe beef? Do you think that's something that's profitable? Why do you bring that in? Things like that. You can get, that does go to a food trend directly related to them. Is everything they have prime? Why don't you have any choice products here? Do you think it's just that much better or worse? Do you grind your own burgers? Like getting them talking about their profession. You can use follow-up questions to a question. Just really portray that in your work. What was their emotions? If you ask them how they got into their business and it was they're the third generation and a memory of their grandpa and you feel like they get emotional, put that in there. He emotionally stated and then told me a story about his grandfather.
Awesome. Yes, that's exactly it. And Chef Greg is 100% spot on with that. Do a little bit of backup research, right? Don't walk in, just like if you're preparing for a class or an exam, you don't just walk in with nothing, right? So have some questions that you can talk to the interviewee about. All right, some questions like Chef Greg was saying. Different cuts of meat. Why this, that, or the other? Okay. Oh, you're a brewer. Okay. Are you using locally grown hops? What trends do we see? Do you have certain flavors? Do you make seasonal beers? Maybe you're talking to that vintner, right? The winemaker, and you start asking about what type of chemicals, right? Is it a natural wine? Or, now, if anybody doesn't know, because this is kind of a new thing, but there's this whole trend that's going back to natural wine. Have you ever had wine and you get a headache the next day? Maybe because you had too much? but maybe also because it has some unnatural, just like, guys, this is a crazy thing, just like our food, our drinks also have preservatives in it and additives and natural flavor and color being added. If you were to look at, and I'll send this out, I'll put this in the class cafe to ask your questions here. The list of ingredients that are acceptable to be in wine is out of control. Absolutely out of control. There's a thing called mega purple. Sounds like I made it up, right? Mega purple. I'm gonna pull it up just so you guys see. It is basically concentrated flavor and color that is added to wine. Do you ever taste that wine? You're like, it's got, my tongue's black now. Like, what's going on, right? Teeth, lips. Yeah, that is not from nature, guys, okay? Just like a Kool-Aid mustache is not from nature, nor is the black tongue from red wine, okay? I'm serious. It's crazy. But literally everything that we are putting in our body and that is growing, and I'm not saying that it has to be all natural all the time. Certainly am not, okay? In a perfect world, great. But not when we're trying to feed a population and agriculture's been industrial. Like had to grow with it, right? We had to be able to produce a lot of food. So there were things that had to happen. But let me pull this up because I think you'll all find this pretty interesting because I did research on this about 2 years ago and, I guess 2 years ago. And I was just like, mega purple. I didn't even know. I started doing research on natural wine because a friend works for a restaurant that they only serve natural wine. So here we go. One second. All right, this is from Wine Spectator. You guys can do your own research. But here we go. This is a Wine Spectator. It's a magazine. And I was looking up wine terms and noticed a product called Mega Purple. I've never heard of it and no winemakers talk about it. Can you enlighten us? So it is wine concentrate, brings a darker color and a touch of sweetness when added to wine. You don't hear much about it because what winemaker wants to admit using it. Okay, from what I've heard, when it's added to wine, it's in very small amounts, 0.1% by volume. So can we imagine how small that is? If it's 0.1% in a bottle of wine, right? Or a vat, okay? And they're most probably in the under $10 category. So it can be a controversial topic, right? So I would say just start doing research. Ask and think about what you're putting into your body. It's really interesting, okay? Next week, we're going to be talking a little bit more about animals and how slaughterhouses and ranches and everything work. So just get prepared. I'm not going to show anything too graphic, but you guys can start doing that research on your own. Videos, there's a lot of information out there. But remember when you watch some of these documentaries that everybody has an angle and something that they're trying to prove. Okay, so take everything with a grain of salt. Take what I say with a grain of salt, right? Do your own research. That's the point. You need to be doing your own research about your food. So, let's see. Does anybody have any questions regarding what is expected of them for this assignment or anything? Or about Mega Purple or anything? Ooh, really, chef?
Yeah. At that place I showed you I went to for the tasting menu? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Guys, did you know that there is a ton of wine in Texas? Texas grows tons of wine grapes. Who the heck knew? Do we think they're adding Mega Purple? I don't know. Now, that's the other thing, right? Larger farms, smaller farms, different quantity, different quality. What are you putting in? What are you getting out, right? It's all about production. Hatch chili wine, no way. Interesting. All right, class. So, Chef, did you have anything you want to say?
No, I'll get carried away if we start on wine. So
Thank
you everybody for your assignments, and I do look forward to seeing everybody's interviews. That's all I have.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Class, reach out. If you have questions, let's talk. It's fun to talk about food. All right. Shoot me a message. Whatever. If you got a question about something, shoot me a message. Find a cool article, post it in the class cafe. Right. This is our last 6 weeks before you go on externship. So squeeze the juice out of it. All right. Get the most you can. Watch out for that mega purple, and we will catch you all next week. All right.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Bye.